The next person that's going to be speaking is Mr. Joe Bailey. Joe is the owner of Wildlife Ranch Solutions. He is Chris and I's business partner, world-class human being, and he's doing a lot with landowners all over the state with regards to consulting. And so I'm going to go ahead and bring Joe up and let him give his presentation.
Good morning. Thank you all for joining me today to discuss an important aspect of breeding exotic livestock, the duties of a ranch manager. As Brian said, my name is Joe Bailey. I am the president of Wildlife Ranch Solutions. We are a full-service management support company for the breeders and owners of exotic livestock. All of the services that we offer are custom-tailored to maximize the sustainability of a specific ranch property while simultaneously reaping the benefits of a reduced tax burden for the ownership entity. Caring for livestock is a very unique and complex commitment that requires specialized knowledge and expertise. Today I'll be sharing with you several key points related to the role and responsibilities of the ranch manager and then how to incentivize that role. Exotic livestock breeding and ranching is an obviously thriving industry that supports conservation, ecotourism, and sustainable hunting practices. And at the heart of this industry lies the ranch manager. He's an individual who orchestrates the many aspects of ranch management to ensure its success. They are responsible for the well-being of the animals, the health of the land, and the overall sustainability of the ranch. And so where should a ranch manager begin? I think a logical place is monitoring your animal populations. It's a crucial but often overlooked part of any breeding operation is a detailed inventory, okay? We encourage ranch managers to be active in putting their eyes on every animal at least 3 times per week. In addition to driving around the ranch looking at the animals, this can be accomplished through electronic monitoring with cameras at feeding stations or by using drones. All of my consultants use drones on a near daily basis to conduct inventories on client properties and check fences where the terrain is non-permissive to walking or driving. While you're conducting those inventories and numbers are being confirmed, other key points need to be recorded, like body condition, reproductive status. That should all be written down so you can defer, look back at it later. Things like changes in herd dynamic, negative interactions with other species should be noted as well. Without these effective management strategies, populations can quickly become overburdened, leading to food shortages, disease outbreaks, and other negative impacts on the ecosystem. By carefully managing populations through measures such as selective hunting, capture and translocation, or contraceptive techniques, ranch managers and owners can maintain healthy species populations that are in symbiosis with their environment. Managers must remember that the animals are their focus and their daily workflow should be structured to reflect that. So moving on to implementing sustainable herd management practices. When we discuss herd management, we're often referring to a number of things that must be considered. What are the goals of the ranch? Are we holding back offspring and growing the herds? Or is the ranch stocked appropriately and the sale of offspring a priority? The herd management discussion should be driven by 2 big picture key points. The first is the sustainability and ecological health of the ranch, and then the financial goals of the ranch. Another question that must be asked is, are we creating an unnecessary intra or interspecies conflict on the property? So there's a number of ways that these conflicts manifest. The 3 most common are conflict over a lack of females, animals competing for the same resources, and the threat of crossbreeding. So there are certain species that do not interact well with one another when there is a shortage of females. Kudu, generally a low conflict species that thrive even when there is numerous males in a herd. On the inverse, sable and gemsbok are prime examples of species that don't generally allow more than one dominant breeder bull in their immediate area. As I mentioned, there are also species that will compete for the same resources. If there's a pasture with three significantly different species of animals that occupy the same ecological niche, there could very well be a competition for food. This conflict is fairly easily avoidable, and the situation can be de-escalated by simply adding additional feeders to the pasture, okay? Another example, short grass grazers can be complemented by a long grass grazer if the vegetation, Short grass grazers can be complemented by a long grass grazer if the vegetation on the ranch will support them. Grant's zebras and wildebeest are a great example of two species that directly benefit from one another in the wild. The zebras are a long grass grazer, and wildebeest can then graze on the short grass left behind by the zebra, which is important in the regenerative cycle of the grasses. Several species of exotic hoofstock will crossbreed. A perfect example of this, and kind of piggybacking on what Brian said, is Gemsbok breeding with scimitar horned oryx and creating a Simbok. Okay, this is a major threat to the financial stability of the ranch. Some species will become bred and not carry the offspring full term. Others will have the offspring and it will be much less marketable than a purebred example. These types of mistakes can be costly, as crossbred animals are much less valuable and the ranch has missed out on a breeding opportunity that would have resulted in a financial gain. Considering the ranch manager will generally have the most input about herd management, it's imperative that he or she be able to communicate all pertinent information and reasoning to the ranch ownership. Stocking rates, this is a popular one. Proper stocking rates. Critical to the success of ranching operations is they have a direct impact on the health and productivity of the land and the livestock. If a ranch is stocked with too many animals, the carrying capacity of the land is exceeded, resulting in overgrazing, soil erosion, and damage to vegetation. This can initiate a domino effect that begins with a degradation in the quality of habitat, and worst case, could lead to reduced breeding opportunities. On the other hand, if a ranch is understocked, it may not generate sufficient revenue to cover operating expenses or may fail to provide successful breeding of rare and threatened species. With that in mind, it is important for ranch managers to carefully consider the carrying capacity of their land and the specific needs of the species they wish to manage, and adjust stocking rates as needed to ensure a healthy and sustainable ecosystem. Proper stocking rates also help minimize disease transmission and competition among animals, which can further enhance the productivity and success of the ranch. So again, with stocking rates, it's not an exact science with respect to exotics. A good example of this, some county appraisal districts include an exotic livestock unit equivalent chart on their websites. Somehow they have equated kudu, a strict browser, to a traditional livestock unit, a cow-calf pair. The method that they use of calculating carrying capacity are flawed. Since the myriad of species do not always directly compete for the same resources. And although there is some overlap in feeding habits, the equivalent unit method of measuring is not always ideal. While the argument against using a stocking rate in place for cattle is strong, it is not an exact science in practice. Each species, their feeding habits, and the vegetation on the ranch must be analyzed prior to settling on what species are ideal to raise. Wildlife Ranch Solutions, we execute these types of surveys on ranches all over the state regularly in order to build business plans that are a roadmap for people wanting to breed super exotics and then reap the tax benefits of doing so. Okay. So I know that was fast and there's a lot to it, but with everything that I just talked about, let's discuss ranch manager incentives. Considering that the roles and responsibilities of the manager of an exotic breeding operation are vast and almost never ending, the idea of incentivizing the role could be an important part of the landowner's compensation package to the ranch manager. I feel that most people that are confident and responsible would take a smaller salary up front for the opportunity to share in the gross offspring sales of the ranch, okay? We all like to talk about investments, good and bad, and I believe that one of the most important investments that ranch owners can make is in a reliable manager. I recommend to clients that they include a percentage of the gross profit from animal sales as part of the ranch manager's compensation package. The benefits of this agreement are, or could be, obviously immense. Other performance bonuses that I suggest, such as farming and agricultural crop yield bonuses, are mutually beneficial to the manager and ranch ownership. With such incentives in place, the manager has direct control over his or her success, and that is a powerful and a very motivating factor to excel every day. Just going to wrap it up here. In conclusion, the role of a ranch manager is diverse and demanding, requiring a deep understanding of wildlife and livestock management, financial planning, land management, and personnel management. By fulfilling these responsibilities, ranch managers contribute significantly to the success and the sustainability of the exotic livestock industry. By investing in the development and support of our ranch managers, we can ensure the continued growth and success of the exotic livestock industry. I know that was quick. It was a lot of information. If anybody wants to talk to me more in depth about it, I'll be here all day, and I'll be here for the auction this evening. So thank you for your attention, and I hope this discussion has provided some valuable insight into the critical duties and the many roles that ranch managers undertake to create our thriving and sustainable breeding ranches. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Joe. So again, Joe is working with landowners all over the state, and he's providing a really great blueprint for how to start, how to operate, and then how to produce revenue. One of the things that he does, I know he talked a little bit about it, is that all of us love the IRS, right? I think everybody here likes paying the IRS. And so one of the great parts about our industry is that this is a huge portion of what we do is tax deductible, and there's some really, really great tax incentives related to what we do. So one of the issues that people run into is this a hobby or is it a business? And one of the ways that you can combat the IRS, if in fact they come knocking on your door and challenging you as to whether this is a hobby or a business, is that if you have a business plan created for your operation, that is a defense for saying it's not a hobby. And so Joe, for a fee, it's not a terribly expensive fee, it depends on how big your ranch is, but for a fee, he will actually create a business plan. It's a business plan that covers vegetation on your property, any things that you need to do like fencing or water lines or any kind of improvements you might need to make. But he also has a stocking strategy that you don't necessarily have to abide by exactly, but it's a stocking strategy that also reflects a financial return. It's got a pro forma in it. And so it gives you this document that demonstrates that you actually are approaching this as a business rather than as a hobby. So even if you don't use all the rest of his services, or maybe even not his services, it would be really wise to have a written business plan in place for your operation in the event that you ever get audited and the IRS gives you a challenge about whether or not your exotic business is a hobby or whether it's a business. So if you get with Joe, he can give you some more details and some more information about that.